The rain hammered against the stained glass windows of St. Catherine's Chapel, like angry fists demanding entry. Inside, beneath the vaulted ceiling and flickering candlelight, two strangers stood at the altar, bound not by love, but by desperation. Elena Martinez clutched her bouquet of white lilies so tightly that her knuckles had turned the color of bone. The flowers trembled in her hands, betraying the terror she fought to conceal behind her practiced smile. She was 24, beautiful in the way that poverty sometimes sculpts a face. Sharp cheekbones, eyes that had seen too much, a mouth that had forgotten how to trust. Her wedding dress was borrowed, 2 sizes too large, hastily pinned in the back by her sobbing mother just hours before. Across from her stood Adrian Blackwood. Even his name sounded like old money, like the kind of wealth that doesn't announce itself, because it doesn't have to. At 32, Adrian was the youngest CEO in his family's dynasty, a shipping empire that stretched across 3 continents. His tailored Tom Ford suit probably cost more than Elena's childhood home. His jaw was carved from marble, his grey eyes cold as winter storms, his expression unreadable as ancient stone. "Do you, Adrian Nathaniel Blackwood, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Father Michael's voice echoed through the empty chapel. Empty except for Adrian's lawyer, a skeletal man in wire-rimmed glasses who watched the proceedings with the detachment of someone witnessing a business transaction. "Because that's exactly what this was, a transaction, I do." Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. He didn't look at Elena when he said it. Elena's heart hammered so violently she thought it might shatter her ribcage. This morning she'd been a waitress at Marco's diner, serving coffee to construction workers, and counting her tips with the meticulous desperation of someone who knew every dollar mattered. This morning her little brother Miguel had been in the ICU at County General, his 8-year-old body ravaged by leukemia. The bills stacking up like tombstones her family could never afford to pay. Then Adrian Blackwood had walked into her life with an offer that sounded like salvation wrapped in poison. "And do you, Elena Rose Martinez, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The chapel fell silent. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath. Elena's mind flashed to Miguel's pale face, to the machines breathing for him, to her mother's work-worn hands, clutching a rosary she could no longer afford to believe in. Adrian had promised $1 million. Immediate payment. Full medical care for Miguel at the finest hospital in the country. All she had to do was marry him for 1 year, no questions asked. No explanations given, just a signature, a vow, and 12 months of her life sold to a stranger whose eyes held secrets darker than any night. Elena's voice cracked. She could feel Adrian's gaze on her now, penetrating, assessing. "I do." Father Michael pronounced them husband and wife with all the enthusiasm of a man reading a death certificate. "You may kiss the bride." Adrian stepped forward. Elena's breath caught. Up close she could smell his cologne, expensive cedar and smoke. His hand reached for her face, fingers cool against her flushed cheek. For one moment something flickered in his grey eyes. Pain, regret, fear. Then his lips pressed against hers, a kiss as cold and contractual as the papers she'd signed. It lasted exactly 3 seconds. When he pulled away, the shutters had closed again. Adrian Blackwood, the man, had disappeared behind Adrian Blackwood, the fortress. "Congratulations," the lawyer said, approaching with a briefcase. He opened it to reveal neat stacks of $100 bills. "The first installment. The remainder will be transferred once the year is complete. Remember the terms, Mrs. Blackwood." Mrs. Blackwood, the name felt like chains made of gold. "We leave in 20 minutes, Adrian said, not to Eleanor, but to his lawyer. "Have the car ready. Leave?" Eleanor's voice was small. "Leave where?" Adrian finally looked at her, really looked at her. And in his eyes she saw something that made her blood run cold. "Not anger, not cruelty. Something worse, grief to my estate," he said quietly. "To begin our arrangement." The lawyer departed. Father Michael retreated to his vestry, leaving them alone in the chapel. Rain continued its assault on the windows. Helena stood in her borrowed dress, holding a bouquet of dying flowers, married to a stranger who looked at her like she was both his salvation and his curse. "Why?" she whispered. The question had been burning in her throat since Adrian had approached her 3 days ago with his impossible offer. "Why me? Why any of this?" Adrian turned toward the altar, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. When he spoke, His voice was so quiet she almost couldn't hear him over the storm. "Because exactly 1 year ago today, my wife died." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Wife, he'd been married before, and she had died on their wedding anniversary. "The terms are simple," Adrian continued, still facing away from her. "I'll live in the east wing of the mansion. I'll stay in the west. We attend necessary public functions together. We present the image of a happy couple. Beyond that, we are strangers who happen to share an address. After 1 year, you'll receive the remaining payment. We'll divorce quietly and you'll never see me again." "But why? No questions." He turned now, and the hardness had returned to his face. "That was the agreement, Elena. I bought your time, not your curiosity. You get your money. So I get—" He stopped abruptly, jaw clenching. "So I get what I need." A black Mercedes pulled up outside, headlights cutting through the rain. Adrian strode toward the chapel doors, then paused. "One more thing," he said without looking back. "My bedroom is locked always. Don't ever try to enter it. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me anything about my past. If you break these rules, the contract is void. Do you understand?" Elena nodded, even though she didn't understand anything. Not why a millionaire would pay a stranger to be his wife. Not why grief seemed to pour off him in waves. Not why a man who clearly wanted nothing to do with her had chosen her specifically. Good. Adrian pushed open the heavy wooden doors. Rain and wind rushed in, extinguishing several candles. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Blackwood." As Elena followed him into the storm, into the luxury car that smelled of leather and secrets, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the rain-streaked window. She looked like a ghost in her white dress. A beautiful, terrified ghost who had just sold her. Sold what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, as the Mercedes pulled away from St. Catherine's Chapel and headed toward the Blackwood estate, was that Adrian's locked bedroom held more than memories. It held a truth so terrible, so impossible, that when she finally discovered it, nothing would ever be the same again. The car drove deeper into the night, and Elena Rose Martinez, now Elena Blackwood, felt the first whisper of a realization that would soon become a scream. She hadn't married a widower. She'd married a man haunted by something far worse than death. The Blackwood estate rose from the darkness, like a Gothic nightmare carved from stone and secrets. As the Mercedes wound up the tree-lined driveway, Elena pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. She'd seen wealth before. She'd served it scrambled eggs and coffee at Marco's diner. But this wasn't just wealth. This was dynasty, legacy, power so old it had calcified into architecture. The mansion sprawled across what must have been 20 acres, a fortress of grey stone with towers that pierced the storm-bruised sky. Ivy crawled up the walls like grasping fingers. Windows glowed with warm light, but somehow they looked cold, like eyes that saw everything and felt nothing. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the estate in stark relief, and Elena thought she saw movement in one of the upper windows. A figure, watching, then darkness swallowed it again. "Home, sweet home," Adrian muttered, though his tone suggested anything but sweetness. The car stopped beneath a covered portico. Before Elena could reach for the door handle, a man appeared, elderly, impeccably dressed in a butler's uniform that looked like it predated World War II. "Welcome home." "Sir," he said, opening Adrian's door with practiced precision. His accent was British, his posture military straight. "And welcome to Blackwood Estate, madam. I am Mr. Hendricks. I've served the Blackwood family for 43 years. His eyes met Elena's for just a moment, and she saw something flicker there. Pity, warning. But then it was gone, replaced by professional courtesy. "Mr. Hendricks will show you to your quarters," Adrian said, already striding toward the massive double doors. "I have work to attend to." "But—" Elena stumbled out of the car, her heels catching on the hem of her too large dress. "Don't you think we should talk?" "About the arrangements?" "About— Mr. Hendricks knows everything you need." Adrian paused at the threshold, silhouetted against the golden light spilling from inside. "Breakfast is at 7. Don't be late. We have a charity gala tomorrow night, our first public appearance. Try to look like you actually want to be married to me." Then he vanished into the mansion, leaving Elena standing in the rain with a stranger who'd served his family longer than she'd been alive. "This way, madam." Mr. Hendricks produced an umbrella and guided her inside. The entrance hall stole Elena's breath. A grand staircase swept upward, splitting into two wings like arms reaching toward opposite ends of the house. The floors were marble, polished to a mirror shine. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Portraits lined the walls, generations of Blackwood staring down with expressions ranging from stern to cruel. Old money, old blood, old secrets. The master has requested you stay in the East Wing, Mr. Hendricks explained as they climbed the stairs. His voice echoed strangely, as if the house itself was listening. Your suite includes a bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, and private balcony. Meals can be taken in the dining room or brought to you. The staff has been informed of your situation. My situation? Eleanor's voice sounded too loud in the vast space. Mr. Hendricks' expression remained carefully neutral. Your marriage, madam. They understand discretion is paramount. They walked down a corridor lined with more portraits, more watching eyes. Eleanor counted 6 doors before Mr. Hendricks stopped at the 7th. He produced a key, an actual key, heavy and old-fashioned, and unlocked it. Your quarters, Mrs. Blackwood. The suite was beautiful in an intimidating way. Everything was too perfect, too coordinated. Cream and gold and tasteful artwork that probably cost more than her family's yearly income. A 4-poster bed dominated the room, draped in silk that looked too expensive to touch. Through an open door, she glimpsed a bathroom with a clawfoot tub and fixtures that gleamed like captured sunlight. But it felt empty. Despite all the luxury, all the careful decoration, it felt like a beautiful cage. The master's quarters are in the West Wing, Mr. Hendricks said, and something in his tone made Elena turn to look at him. The last door at the end of the corridor. It remains locked at all times. The master values his privacy. He told me, Elena whispered. In the chapel. He said never to try to enter. Mr. Hendricks nodded slowly. Good, that's very good, madam. He moved toward the door, then paused. A word of advice, if I may? Please, this house has rules, spoken and unspoken. Follow them, and your year here will pass smoothly. Break them. He trailed off, and for a moment the professional mask slipped. Elena saw genuine concern in his weathered face. There are some doors that should never be opened. Some questions that should never be asked. Do you understand? Eleanor wanted to say no. She didn't understand any of this. Not why a grieving widower would pay a stranger to pretend to be his wife. Not why his bedroom was locked like a prison cell. Not why everyone in this mansion seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. But she nodded anyway. Good. Mr. Hendricks moved to leave, then stopped one more time. Mrs. Adrian, the previous Mrs. Blackwood, she was a lovely woman, kind, gentle. Too gentle, perhaps, for a house like this. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. She used to walk the halls at night, said she heard voices, whispers. The staff thought she was unwell, but now, after everything that happened, he shook his head. Just remember what I said, madam. Some doors should stay closed. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone in her golden cage. She sank onto the bed, her mind reeling. The previous Mrs. Blackwood, Adrian's dead wife, a woman who had walked these same halls, heard whispers, and then died mysteriously. Had she broken the rules? Had she opened the wrong door? Eleanor stood and walked to the window. Her suite overlooked the back of the estate, formal gardens now drowning in rain, a hedge maze, and beyond that, darkness. Lightning flashed again, and this time she clearly saw a figure standing in the garden, motionless, staring up at the house, up at her window. Elena's heart stopped. The figure wore a long dark coat, hood pulled up against the rain. For a moment that stretched into eternity. They stood there, Elena at her window, the figure in the garden, separated by glass and rain and something that felt like doom. Then another lightning flash, and the figure was gone. Elena stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. Had she imagined it? Was the stress, the fear, the absolute insanity of her situation making her see things? A knock at her door made her jump. Madam? A young woman's voice, nervous. I'm Sophie, one of the housemaids. I've brought your dinner. Elena opened the door to find a girl not much younger than herself carrying a silver tray. Sophie had kind eyes, but they wouldn't quite meet Elena's. Thank you. Elena took the tray. Sophie, can I ask you something? The girl tensed. I'm not supposed to talk about the master, ma'am. Mr. Hendricks was very clear. No, not about him. About the gardens. Does anyone work outside at night? A groundskeeper or security? Sophie's face went pale. No one goes outside after dark, ma'am. Not anymore. Not since... She caught herself shaking her head. I should go. Eat your dinner while it's hot. Since what? Eleanor grabbed Sophie's arm, desperation making her bold. Please! I need to know what I've walked into. Sophie looked torn, fear warring with something like sympathy. Finally she leaned close, voice dropping to a whisper. Since Mrs. Adrian died, they found her in the garden, ma'am, at the center of the maze. And the strange thing was... She swallowed hard. The strange thing was, according to the police, she'd been dead for hours. But multiple staff members swore they'd seen her walking the halls that same night. After she was already dead, ice flooded Elena's veins. That's impossible. That's what everyone said. But I was here that night, ma'am, working late in the kitchen, and I saw her too. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I saw Mrs. Adrian walk past the kitchen door at midnight. She looked right at me. She was crying. She said, "Don't let him keep you here. Run while you still can." And then I found out she'd been found in the garden at 10 p.m., 2 hours before I saw her. Sophie pulled her arm free from Eleanor's grip. Please don't ask me anything else. And please, ma'am, be careful. This house, it does things to people. Changes them. Traps them. Sophie fled, leaving Eleanor standing in the doorway with a tray of food she could no longer imagine eating. She closed the door and locked it, though against what, she couldn't say. Ghosts? Madness? Her own terrible choices. As she stood there trying to process everything, she heard it. A sound, faint at first, almost below the threshold of hearing, but growing louder, more distinct. Footsteps, pacing, coming from directly above her. Elena's eyes lifted to the ceiling. Above her suite was... What? She tried to remember the mansion's layout. The east wing had 3 floors. She was on the 2nd, so above her was the 3rd floor. The footsteps continued. Back and forth, like someone walking the same path over and over, unable to stop, unable to rest. Elena grabbed her phone and pulled up the house's floor plan. Adrian's lawyer had provided it with the contract documents. The 3rd floor of the east wing showed only one room, a nursery. According to the plans, it had been locked and unused for over a decade. So who or what was pacing up there? The footsteps stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the sound. Eleanor held her breath, straining to hear anything. Then, clear as a bell, cutting through the silence and the storm, a child's laughter. High and sweet and impossibly joyful, echoing through the mansion like a memory that refused to die. Elena's hands shook so violently she dropped her phone. It clattered to the floor, screen cracking. As she bent to retrieve it, she saw something that made her blood turn to ice under the door, seeping into her room like a living thing. Water, not rain, not a leak. Salt water. She could smell the ocean, and floating in the water, drifting toward her feet, a single white lily. Identical to the ones in her wedding bouquet, Elena screamed. Elena didn't remember running into the hallway, didn't remember her bare feet slapping against cold marble, or her screams echoing through the mansion like sirens. All she knew was that suddenly she was pounding on doors, any doors, desperate for another human being, for proof she wasn't losing her mind. Help! Someone, please. A door flew open and Adrian emerged, shirtless, wearing only dark pajama pants. His hair was disheveled, his eyes wild with something between fury and panic. For a moment Eleanor forgot her terror, forgot everything except the shock of seeing him like this, vulnerable, almost human. Scars crisscrossed his chest, pale lines that told stories of violence she couldn't read. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded, grabbing her shoulders. "It's 1 a.m., the water." Elena gasped, pointing back toward her room. "There's salt water coming from under my door, and I heard footsteps in the nursery and a child laughing, and someone was in the garden watching me and—" "Stop." Adrian's grip tightened. Not painful, but firm, grounding. "Stop. Breathe. Don't tell me to breathe. There's something wrong with this house. Your staff practically told me your first wife was haunting it, and now I'm seeing impossible things, and you need to tell me what the hell is going on." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. The mask cracked just for a second, and Elena saw raw anguish underneath. Then he released her and stepped back, running his hands through his hair. "Mr. Hendricks," he called out. Within seconds, the elderly butler appeared, dressed in a robe but somehow still impeccably composed. "Sir, Take Mrs. Blackwood to the library. Get her tea, brandy, whatever she needs. Adrian's voice had gone flat again. I'll check her room. Adrian, please. Elena reached for him, but he was already walking away. Mr. Hendricks gently took Elena's elbow. Come, madam. Let's get you somewhere safe. Safe? Elena laughed, the sound bordering on hysteria. Is anywhere in this house safe? The butler didn't answer. The library was exactly what Elena would have expected. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather chairs, a fireplace where flames danced behind an ornate screen. Mr. Hendricks settled her into a chair and produced brandy from a crystal decanter with the efficiency of long practice. Drink, he ordered gently. All of it, Elena obeyed. The alcohol burned down her throat, spreading warmth through her chest, quieting the worst of her panic. Her hands stopped shaking. Her breathing slowed. Better? Mr. Hendricks asked. No. Elena set down the empty glass. I want the truth, all of it. Who was Adrian's first wife? How did she really die? And why does everyone in this house act like they're living in a ghost story? Mr. Hendricks sat down across from her, seeming to age 10 years in the firelight. I've served this family since Adrian was 9 years old. I watched him grow from a lonely boy into a brilliant man. And I watched Isabella destroy him. Isabella, his first wife. Yes. The butler's voice carried decades of sadness. She was beautiful, enchanting, but there was something wrong from the very beginning. She claimed to hear voices, see things that weren't there. Adrian thought it was artistic sensitivity. She was a painter. But it got worse after they married. What happened? She became obsessed with the West Wing, with Adrian's bedroom specifically. She said she could hear someone crying behind the locked door. A woman crying. She begged Adrian to let her in, but he refused. The fights were terrible. The whole house could hear them. Elena leaned forward. What's behind that door, Mr. Hendricks? I don't know. The butler met her eyes and she believed him. Adrian locked it the day after Isabella died. Before that, only he was allowed inside. Not even the housekeeping staff. Whatever he keeps there, it's his deepest secret. You said she was found in the garden. Yes, at the center of the maze. Mr. Hendricks's voice dropped to a whisper. She'd been there for hours, they said, drowned. But there's no water in the maze, Mrs. Blackwood, just grass and hedges. Yet Isabella was soaked, her lungs full of salt water. The coroner couldn't explain it. The police ruled it inconclusive. Jesus, Elena breathed. And Adrian was in New York on business. He had a dozen witnesses. He couldn't have been here. But when he got the news, the butler's voice cracked. I've never seen a man so destroyed. He screamed for 3 hours straight, destroyed half the furniture in his room. Then he went silent, locked his door. And when he emerged 3 days later, he was different, changed. The Adrian who loved Isabella had died with her. Until a year later, when he decided to marry a random waitress from the city. Eleanor shook her head. Why me? Why any of this? Before Mr. Hendricks could answer, Adrian appeared in the doorway. He'd put on a shirt but still looked disheveled, haunted. Your room is fine, he said tersely. No water. No flowers, nothing. That's impossible. I checked everywhere. Under the door. In the bathroom. The ceiling, everywhere. His grey eyes bored into hers. There was nothing, Elena. I didn't imagine it. I didn't say you did. Adrian moved to the decanter and poured himself a drink, whiskey neat. He downed it in one swallow. This house, it does things to people. Makes them see things. Especially, he stopped abruptly, especially women. Elena finished. Especially wives? Is that what you were going to say? Adrian's jaw clenched. Go back to bed, Elena. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. No, Elena stood, surprising herself with her own firmness. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me the truth. You brought me into this nightmare. You owe me that much. For a long moment, Adrian just stared at her. Then something seemed to break inside him. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted, defeated. You want the truth? His voice was raw. Fine, Isabella didn't just die. She killed herself. Because of me. Because I couldn't save her from what she was seeing, what she was hearing. Because I kept that goddamn door locked. The words hung in the air like smoke. The anniversary, Elena whispered. 1 year ago today. 1 year ago today I found her in the maze. She'd left a note. It said, the woman behind the door told me how to set her free. Adrian's hands were shaking now. The police thought she was delusional. I thought if I could do it over, if I could have another chance with someone different, someone stronger, maybe I could prevent it from happening again. Elena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. You married me as some kind of experiment. To prove Isabella's death wasn't your fault? To prove it wasn't the house. Adrian surged to his feet. To prove that there's a rational explanation for everything that happened. Isabella was mentally ill. She needed help I couldn't give her. But if another woman lives here, follows the same rules, and nothing happens, then you can finally forgive yourself, Eleanor finished. The pieces were clicking into place, and the picture they formed was heartbreaking. Adrian, that's insane, is it? He laughed bitterly. Or is it insane that right now, as we're standing here, I can hear someone crying behind my locked door? Someone who sounds exactly like Isabella. The library fell silent. Even Mr. Hendricks looked shocked. How long? The butler asked quietly. Since the day after she died. Adrian's voice broke. Every night. Crying, whispering, begging to be let out. I've had the room blessed, sealed. I've slept in hotels, in my office, in my car. It doesn't matter. Wherever I am at midnight, I hear her. Eleanor's anger evaporated, replaced by something uncomfortably close to sympathy. What does she say? Adrian looked at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. She says, open the door, save her. Before it's too late. Save who? I don't know. Adrian's voice was barely a whisper. That's what terrifies me. A clock somewhere in the mansion began to chime. Midnight, the witching hour. And as if on cue, a sound echoed through the house. A woman's voice. Distant but clear. Singing a lullaby in Portuguese, Elena's blood turned to ice. That's Acalanto. My mother used to sing it to my brother when he was a baby. The three of them stood frozen, listening to the impossible. The voice was beautiful, heartbreaking. And it seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Boi da cara preta. Pega essa criança que tem medo de careta. The singing stopped abruptly, and a child began to scream. Not on the third floor this time. Closer. Much closer. The nursery, Mr. Hendricks whispered, his face grey. But that room has been locked for 12 years. Since Master Adrian's sister. Don't. Adrian's voice was sharp. Don't say it. What sister? Elena demanded. Adrian, what happened to your sister? But Adrian was already running, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Eleanor and Mr. Hendricks raced after him. They flew through corridors, up another flight of stairs until they reached a door Elena had never noticed before. Hidden behind a tapestry at the end of the East Wing's 3rd floor, the nursery. The door was ajar. Impossible. Mr. Hendricks had said it was locked. Had been locked for over a decade. Adrian stood before it, chest heaving, face white as death. Adrian, Elena said carefully. What's in there? He didn't answer. Just pushed the door open. The nursery was frozen in time. A white crib, a rocking chair, toys scattered on the floor covered in dust. But that wasn't what made Elena gasp. The walls. Every inch of the walls was covered in children's drawings. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, drawn in crayon marker paint. And every single one depicted the same thing. A little girl drowning. A little girl with dark hair and grey eyes like Adrian's, sinking beneath blue waves, hands reaching up, mouth open in a silent scream. Sophia, Adrian whispered. My baby sister. She was 7 years old when she drowned. I was supposed to be watching her. We were at the beach house. I fell asleep. And when I woke up, his voice shattered. She was just gone. The ocean took her. They never found her body. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Adrian, that's what's behind my locked door, he said, turning to face her. His expression was beyond pain, beyond grief. Not Isabella. Not a ghost. Just a room full of her memories. Her paintings. The life we would have built together. I can't let it go. Can't open the door and face what I lost. Can't let anyone else see how completely I failed. And Isabella found out, Elena said slowly. She discovered the truth about your sister, about your guilt. She said Sophia was trying to communicate with her, that she needed my help to cross over. Adrian gestured helplessly at the drawings. These appeared after Isabella died. One new drawing every night for a year. I checked the door every morning, and there would be one more. I've had locks changed, cameras installed. Nothing works. Mr. Hendricks approached one of the drawings, studying it closely. Sir, he said urgently, these aren't children's drawings. What? The technique is too sophisticated. The shading, the perspective. I think... He pulled out his phone, taking a photo and zooming in. I think these are Isabella's work. Adrian strode over, examining the drawings. His face went ashen. That's her style. Her signature technique for water. But how? Because she's still here, a voice said from the doorway. They all spun around, standing in the doorway. Soaking wet, seaweed tangled in her dark hair, was a woman who looked exactly like the portrait Elena had seen downstairs. Isabella Blackwood, dead for exactly 1 year and smiling. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved, nobody breathed. The impossible stood before them, dripping salt water onto hardwood floors as real as flesh and blood and memory. Hello, Adrian, Isabella said softly. Did you miss me? Adrian made a sound like a wounded animal. He stumbled backward, hitting the wall, his face cycling through shock, horror, hope, and then finally rage. You're not real, he gasped. You're dead. I identified your body. I buried you. You're dead? Isabella tilted her head, water streaming from her hair. Is that what they told you? How convenient, how tidy. How very Blackwood of them. Them? Elena found her voice, though it shook. Who's them? Isabella's eyes, startlingly blue, alive with intelligence and something darker, shifted to Elena. Oh, the replacement. How predictable, Adrian. Did you really think you could just swap me out like a broken part? Upgrade to a newer model and solve all your problems? How are you alive? Adrian's voice was strangled. The coroner confirmed what your mother paid him to confirm. Isabella stepped fully into the room, and Elena could see now that she wasn't a ghost. She was solid, real, though unnaturally pale. What, you didn't know? Your family doesn't like scandals, darling. They especially don't like wives who ask too many questions, so they arranged a more permanent solution. You're lying. But Adrian's voice lacked conviction. Am I? Isabella moved toward the drawings on the walls, trailing her fingers over them. Sophia tried to warn me, you know. Your little sister. She understood what the Blackwoods really are, what they're capable of. Sophia is dead, Adrian said, but there was a question in his statement now. A crack in certainty's foundation. Is she? Isabella turned back to them, and her smile was terrible. Or is that just another convenient story? Another family secret locked behind doors you're too afraid to open? Mr. Hendricks had gone grey as old paper. Mrs. Isabella, what are you saying? I'm saying that 12 years ago little Sophia Blackwood didn't drown accidentally. She saw something she shouldn't have. Overheard something she wasn't meant to hear. Isabella's voice was gentle now, almost kind. And Adrian's mother, the formidable Margaret Blackwood, couldn't have a 7-year-old running around with dangerous knowledge. So Sophia had to disappear. Had to have an accident. No. Adrian shook his head violently. No, my mother loved Sophia. She was devastated. She was relieved. Isabella moved closer to him, and Elena saw tears streaming down her face now, mixing with the salt water. And when I started asking questions about what really happened that day at the beach house, when I found Sophia's diary hidden in your mother's safe... What diary? Adrian's voice was barely audible. The diary where Sophia wrote about the bad man your mother met with, the man who gave her envelopes full of money. The man Sophia saw her kill when he threatened to go to the authorities. Isabella's smile was broken glass. Your shipping empire, darling. It wasn't built on legitimate trade. Your mother was trafficking people, smuggling them in cargo containers. And when her partner developed a conscience, she had him eliminated. Sophia witnessed it. So Sophia had to go too. The room spun. Elena grabbed the doorframe for support. This couldn't be real. This was too much, too terrible. I don't believe you, Adrian whispered, but his face told a different story. Recognition. Horrible, dawning recognition. The locked door. You wanted in my room because I found evidence, documents, photos, all hidden in your study. Isabella's voice hardened. You knew, didn't you? Some part of you always knew. That's why you could never open that door. Not because of Isabella's memories, but because of what else was hidden there. Proof of your family's crimes. I didn't know, Adrian roared, his control finally shattering. I swear to God, Isabella, I didn't know. My mother told me Sophia drowned. She showed me the police reports, the death certificate, all forged, all bought. Isabella's expression softened slightly. I know you didn't know everything, Adrian. That's why I fell in love with you. You were different from them, good, or at least you were trying to be. But your mother couldn't risk me exposing the truth. So she invited me to the estate one night, told me she wanted to make amends, offered me tea. Isabella's voice cracked. I woke up in a warehouse by the docks. There were others there, girls, women, all drugged, waiting to be loaded into containers, waiting to disappear. Eleanor felt bile rise in her throat. Oh my God. Your mother-in-law's associates told me I had a choice, Isabella continued. Die there another nameless victim, or stage my own death, disappear forever, and keep my mouth shut about what I'd learned. They said if I talked, they'd kill Adrian, make it look like suicide, grief over losing me. She laughed bitterly. So I chose to die. They faked the drowning, paid off the coroner, and I've been hiding ever since, watching, gathering evidence. Where? Adrian demanded. Where have you been? Closer than you think. Isabella looked at Elena now, really looked at her. I'm sorry you got caught up in this. I tried to warn you. The figure in the garden. The water. The flowers. I was trying to scare you away before you became another casualty. The footsteps, Elena breathed. The singing. That was you? I've been living in the walls. Servants' passages, secret rooms. This mansion is riddled with them. Margaret Blackwood didn't want to see the staff, so she had hidden corridors built. Isabella's smile was grim. I've been right here the whole time, watching Adrian mourn me, watching him lock away his grief, watching him bring you here as some twisted attempt at redemption. Why reveal yourself now? Mr. Hendricks asked quietly. Why tonight? Isabella pulled something from her pocket. A USB drive, sealed in a plastic bag to protect it from the water. Because I finally have everything I need. 12 months of evidence. Financial records proving the trafficking operation. Communications between Margaret and her associates. Video footage from hidden cameras I installed. Names, dates, locations, everything. She held it out to Adrian. And because tonight is the anniversary. Symbolic, I suppose. A year ago, Isabella Blackwood died. Tonight she comes back to destroy the empire that killed her. Adrian stared at the USB drive like it was a bomb. My mother is currently at your Singapore office closing a major deal. Containers arriving tonight. 53 women and children from Southeast Asia. Promised jobs and new lives. Instead, they'll be sold to the highest bidders. Isabella's voice shook with fury. It ends tonight, Adrian. You take this evidence to the FBI, or I will. But either way, your family's legacy burns, and Sophia. Adrian's voice broke on his sister's name. Is she really? I don't know. For the first time, Isabella looked uncertain. I found records of a payment to a boarding school in Switzerland. Under a different name. A girl matching Sophia's description. Age matches. But I couldn't get close enough to confirm. Your mother has her protected or imprisoned, I couldn't tell which. Adrian's legs seemed to give out. He sank to the floor, head in his hands. All these goddamn years, and I didn't see it. Didn't question. I was so focused on the business, on maintaining the family reputation. You were a child when Sophia disappeared, Isabella said gently, kneeling beside him. You're not responsible for your mother's sins, but I benefited from them. I built my entire life on blood money. Adrian looked up and Elena saw his face was wet with tears. How many people, Isabella? How many lives destroyed? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Over 3 decades. Isabella's hand hovered over his shoulder but didn't touch. But it ends now, if you have the courage to face it. Adrian stood slowly, transforming before Eleanor's eyes. The broken widower disappeared, replaced by someone harder. Determined, Mr. Hendricks, he said, his voice steel. Call my attorney. The real one, not the one on my mother's payroll. Then call Special Agent Morrison at the FBI. We went to Harvard together. Tell him I'm bringing him the case of his career. Sir. Mr. Hendricks practically ran from the room. Adrian turned to Isabella, and something passed between them. Grief, forgiveness, understanding. I'm sorry for everything, for not protecting you, for not seeing the truth. You were blind because you wanted to be, Isabella said, but you're seeing now. That's what matters. She pressed the USB drive into his hand. Save them, Adrian. The ones arriving tonight. Then find Sophia. Bring her home. What about you? Elena found herself asking. What happens to you after this? Isabella's smile was sad. I've been dead for a year. I'd like to stay that way. Start over somewhere your mother-in-law's reach doesn't extend. Maybe South America, maybe further. She looked at Adrian. Unless you'd rather I testify? Show the world I'm alive? No. Adrian's voice was firm. You've sacrificed enough. Disappear, be free. I'll handle the rest. And her? Isabella gestured to Elena. Your contractual bride? Adrian turned to Elena, and she saw genuine remorse in his eyes. The contract is void, all of it. You'll get the full payment, both installments, plus compensation for trauma, and a confidentiality agreement that protects you, not me. You're free to leave. Tonight, if you want. Elena should have felt relief, joy. She was getting everything she'd been promised and more. Miguel would get his treatment. Her family would be secure. She could walk away from this nightmare and never look back. But instead, she heard herself say, I'm staying. Both Adrian and Isabella stared at her. At least until the FBI arrives, Elena continued. You're going to need witnesses, corroboration, and... She met Adrian's eyes. I don't think you should face this alone. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Gratitude, hope. The ghost of the man he might have been in a different life. Thank you, he whispered. The next hours were chaos. FBI agents descended on the estate like an invading army. Adrian led them to his mother's study, to the locked room revealing secrets that made even seasoned agents pale. Financial records, shipping manifests, communications detailing decades of human trafficking under the guise of legitimate trade. Elena watched Adrian systematically dismantle his own legacy, his own family, with a calm determination that was almost frightening. This was a man who'd finally found his purpose in destruction, injustice. At 4 a.m. they raided the Singapore warehouse. 53 people were freed. Margaret Blackwood was arrested on the tarmac as she tried to flee to a country without extradition. Her associates fell like dominoes, port officials, customs agents, corporate executives. The Blackwood empire collapsed in a single night, and through it all Isabella watched from the shadows. Helena caught glimpses of her in doorways, in mirrors, a ghost witnessing her own resurrection. When the FBI finally left with their evidence and their suspects, Isabella approached Adrian one last time. Sophia, she said, handing him a folder. The school's address, her new identity. Go get your sister. Adrian took the folder with shaking hands. Come with me. Isabella shook her head. She needs her brother, not the woman who helped destroy her mother. Give her time. Give her peace. Maybe one day, she trailed off, then smiled. Maybe one day in another life. She kissed his cheek, nodded to Elena, and walked out of the mansion into the pre-dawn darkness. Elena watched her go, this woman who'd died and returned, who'd sacrificed everything for truth. She loved you very much, Elena said softly. I know. Adrian's voice was rough. And I failed her. But I won't fail Sophia. 3 months later, Elena stood in the garden maze at the center where Isabella had been found dead. The maze had been redesigned, opened up, transformed from a trap into a memorial. A fountain now stood at the center, water dancing in the afternoon sunlight. She heard footsteps and turned to see Adrian approaching. But he wasn't alone. A teenage girl walked beside him, petite, dark-haired, with Adrian's grey eyes. She was thin, fragile-looking, but there was steel in her posture. Sophia, alive, home. Elena, Adrian said, and there was warmth in his voice now. Real warmth. I want you to meet my sister. Sophia studied Elena with disconcerting intensity. You're the one who stayed, who didn't run when you had the chance. I'm the one who couldn't leave your brother alone, Elena corrected gently. Sophia smiled, a real smile that transformed her solemn face. Then you're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Elena admitted. They laughed, and the sound was like healing. The Blackwood empire was gone. The mansion had been sold, the money distributed to trafficking victims and charitable organizations. Adrian had kept only enough to live comfortably, to ensure Sophia got the therapy and support she needed, to rebuild himself from the ashes. He and Elena had divorced quietly. The contract fulfilled, the payment made as promised. But something unexpected had happened during those chaotic months of trials and testimonies and late-night conversations over cold coffee. They'd become friends. I got accepted, Sophia said excitedly. pulling out her phone. To the art program. They loved my portfolio. That's wonderful. Helena hugged her. This girl she'd known for only weeks but felt protective of already. It's because of Isabella's influence, Sophia said quietly. The drawings in the nursery. She taught me through the walls, you know. In Switzerland. She'd send me coded messages, techniques, encouragement. I didn't understand until Adrian explained everything, but she saved me too, in her way. Has there been any word? Elena asked Adrian. He shook his head. Nothing. It's like she vanished into thin air. The PI I hired found traces, a woman matching her description in Buenos Aires, then nothing. Maybe she really did start over. I hope so. They stood together in the redesigned maze, 3 people bound by trauma and survival, and something that might one day become love. Not romantic love, that was too simple. But family love. Chosen family. I'm enrolling in college, Elena announced. Psychology. I want to help trafficking survivors. People who've been through what your mother's victims experienced. Adrian smiled. You'll be brilliant at it. And I'm painting again, Sophia added. Real art, not just the drowning girl. I'm painting hope now. Hope, Adrian repeated softly. I like that. As they walked back toward Adrian's new apartment, modest, modern, nothing like the Gothic mansion, Eleanor reflected on the insane journey that had brought her here. She'd married a stranger for money. She'd uncovered a trafficking empire. She'd witnessed a woman return from the dead, and she'd learned something profound, that sometimes the doors we're told never to open are exactly the ones we need to break down. That secrets, no matter how well buried, eventually rise to the surface. That grace doesn't erase the past, but redeems the future. Miguel was in remission now, healthy and thriving. Her family was secure. And Elena had found something more valuable than the $1 million she'd been promised. She'd found purpose. That night, as she lay in her own apartment across the city, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A message with no name attached, just 5 words. Thank you for saving him. Elena smiled in the darkness. Somewhere in the world, Isabella Blackwood was alive. Living free, and in Switzerland, then Singapore, then eventually The Hague, testimony was given. Justice was served. More survivors were found, more operations dismantled. The Blackwood case became the catalyst for international reform. From death came life. From secrets came truth. From a marriage of strangers came redemption. Epilogue. 5 years later, in a small art gallery in Barcelona, a woman with short red hair and different eyes, colored contacts, stood before a painting. It depicted a stormy night, a Gothic mansion, and 2 figures standing at the center of a maze, a man and a woman, strangers, learning to be something more. The title plate read, The Marriage That Never Was, Artist, Isabella Santiago. The woman smiled, touched the canvas gently, and walked out into the Spanish sunshine. Behind her, the painting remained, a testament to the night that changed everything, a reminder that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about romance, they're about courage, truth, and the strength to tear down empires built on lies, even if it costs you everything. Especially then. Reflection. In the end, this isn't just a story about a contractual marriage or a Gothic mystery. It's about the doors we lock in our own lives, the truths we're afraid to face, the questions we're too scared to ask, the family legacies we inherit without examining. Adrian locked away his grief and his guilt, building walls so high he couldn't see what was happening in his own family. Elena almost sold her soul for survival, willing to imprison herself for her brother's life. Isabella literally died to escape the truth, only to rise again when silence became more unbearable than risk. The lesson whispers through every locked door and shadowed hallway. Some prisons we build ourselves. And the key to freedom is often the courage to face what terrifies us most. Not the ghosts in the mansion, but the truth in our own hearts. Sometimes we marry strangers, to circumstance, to desperation, to fear, but we find ourselves by being brave enough to unlock the doors we were told never to open. That's when strangers become family. That's when night becomes dawn. That's when a marriage of convenience becomes a covenant of courage. And that's when we finally truly come home.